Makes a huge difference if you'll do me a favor by subscribing and liking the podcast wherever you listen. It goes a long way. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy. Imagine being accused and convicted of murder for a crime you didn't commit, sentenced to a life in prison, and fighting for your freedom, for rights of incarcerated women, to see your children again, and it taking 36 years. This is Judy Henderson's story, just a little bit of her story on the podcast. And she was sentenced in 1982 and was pardoned by the governor of Missouri in December of 2017. So from the age of 32 years old to 68 years old, she spent her life behind bars for a crime she didn't commit. You've got to listen to this story. Incredible resilience, determination, courage, never completely losing her hope for getting out and people finding out that she was innocent and getting her freedom back and also check out her book When the Light Finds Us, which came out in April 2025, a few months ago, which tells her story in greater detail. One you definitely need to read, because this story is unbelievable. Judy,
Hi.
thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. You strike me. We don't know each other yet, but we will by the end of the 45 minutes.
Yes, we
You
will.
strike me as an incredibly resilient and courageous human,
Thank
and
you.
I'm wondering where does your inner strength come from?
Well, I think my inner strength comes from just wanting to, if there's a wrong, I want to try to make it right. And I want to, I think my inner strength comes from truth and from the stubbornness I get from my mother, maybe, that it gives me the courage to try to fight a system that doesn't always work. And so I think it comes from being the oldest of eight, having to be the leader, being the matriarch, more or less, to speak, with our mother being super busy working. So I think I get it from different different angles, and it's a combination of that really helped me navigate the hard parts in my life, the hard times that I had.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've always had that inner strength from as a child, or it's like grown, it's developed over
I
the
think it's
years as
grown
you.
and developed. But then, Chad, I'm a believer that I believe whatever higher power, whatever the universe, whatever you call your God or your higher power, I believe whenever I was born that I received all the gifts that I would need to get me through this journey. So I feel that we have those already, and we just have to nurture them, water them, let them grow, learn, pay attention to what your talents are, because a lot of people aren't even aware of what their purpose is in life. Whenever they're navigating through a hard, tough, just heart wrenching situation, they're not aware of watching the signs that kind of help you navigate. Like in my situation, there were red flags that I can now look back on and see. But at the time, my growth habit had not developed enough for me to see that, because I was a battered woman for 12 years. Being a battered woman, our brains are wired a little differently. We look at things through a lens of being passive, and a lot of battered women, I'm not going to say all battered women, but my addiction wasn't drugs or alcohol or gambling or shopping. Well, shopping could have been. Let me put it that way now. Now it can be. That's what I was for so many years.
Right,
But at that, yeah. So now I have to watch that.
right, exactly. A new challenge.
But my addiction was love, so I had to be, I had to learn what was healthy and what was not healthy. And so that side of me had not really developed because of the sexual abuse that had occurred through my years of my adolescent years and my younger years of being sexually molested by different individuals. So whenever this transpired to put me where I was for 36 years, that's where I kind of learned to fertilize and water the things that I needed to change, the things that I needed to work on, the things that I had noticed and that through the therapy that I had that were pointed out to me. Like I never pictured love as an addiction. I never thought that was a thing. So I would have to say it's through that, that I was able to get to where I am today, be the person I am today.
What were some if you're willing to go there, and if you're not,
Hmm.
we can redirect, but what were some of the red flags that you noticed, but maybe you, I don't know, dismissed or diminished or disregarded along that way?
Well, now I'm able to look back and see that the my co-defendant, whom I started dating about maybe 7 or 8 months after my 12-year abusive marriage, I started dating him, and I can look back now and see that he had friends that he never introduced me to that seemed very secretive on the phone. The conversations were questionable. I can remember them now. At the time, it wasn't something I would ask questions about because being a victim of domestic violence, you learn not to ask questions because those questions can lead to violence. So I can see now where that should have been suspicious. I can see now where whenever my aunt and I were in the pool for the 4th of July and she asked me why he was on poolside reading a book on manipulation, I pass it off as he's a real estate broker. He has to learn how to sell these $1 million properties, multi-million-dollar properties. So I pass it off as, he has to know how to read people or how to get people to buy. And I'm looking back now and thinking that wasn't the case. But he was very interested in when we first met about my abuse and all that I had been through and wanted me to talk to him openly about everything, which I willingly did because that was fresh and new and something I was never used to. He was not only a real estate broker, but he had been in the ministry at one time. I look back now and another red flag. At one time, he had been in the ministry. Now he wasn't practicing believer. He wasn't in the church anywhere. So another red flag. And I'm thinking, how did I miss all of this? Um, so those were some red flags for me that I would really pay attention to today.
Yeah, yeah. So how would you answer your own question? How did you miss those? Do you think it was because of your your past history?
Because I was so wanting to be loved and treated nicely. And he was very gentlemanly. He was very polite. He was very concerned about what I had lived through and very empathetic, which I took as empathetic and compassionate and just very willing to just sit and listen to me and let talk out what had happened to me. Instead of going to a therapist like I should have went to, I allowed him to be my therapist. And it ended up being a therapy in the wrong direction.
He abused that relationship, that power.
Very much so. Very much so. To where he could make me see that things were fine, nobody was going to get harmed, everything was going to be okay. It was just a conversation. And I didn't see the red flags of him having friends that I was not aware of and having friends that weren't really the kind of friends that you invite over and stuff until I found out after the fact who they were. Yeah. So I was very blindsided.
Yeah, my goodness. What a
Hmm.
difficult, that sounds like such a difficult position to be in.
It was because then after the murder occurred, he took me to Alaska and he was a totally different person, different personality. He started abusing me. He was angry a lot. He was started dealing in drugs, kilos of cocaine and quaaludes, and never had I ever seen him do any kind of drugs, anything like that, that I knew of. I'm sure evidently he was probably doing this behind the scene, and because after he was acquitted of this murder, he ended up getting arrested a few months down the road by selling $250,000 worth of cocaine to an undercover federal agent. So this wasn't something you just happened to step into. This is something that you're aware of, that you're good at, that you've been doing for a while. Because you don't just jump into that kind of a quantity all of a sudden. So there was a lot of things that I saw that I was not aware of whenever we were here in Missouri.
So, how old were you when? Take me back here, if you can provide context. Like, so how old were you when he murdered someone, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
old were you at the time?
I was 30, 31, 32, I think 31 maybe. 32. I can't remember right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so around that age, early 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, early
So
30s.
so he murders someone, and like what transpired? What happened? And then you go to Alaska. How did that evolve? How did that
Okay,
transpire?
yes, he murdered somebody, and then we were going to, let me see, after that happened, I'm trying to make this brief, this section of it, because it's not something that I find pleasure in talking about, but I was shot during the situation, during the incident. So he had to take me to somebody he evidently trusted and that was involved in this with him, that I was unaware of at the time. The whole thing, everything that happened after that incident was brand new to me. I had never been made aware of these people or what they were or how they were involved in this until after the fact. They told him, this individual told him, you need to take her to a doctor that won't report gunshot wounds. And so to this day, as far as we know, because he did not do that, it ended up, I think I was just grazed, that the bullet went through the victim and just grazed me. There was a lot of bleeding and there was a lot of pain and a lot of numbness in the beginning. And that's what I guess God's good, gunshot wound feels like. So then we were going to, he sent a hitman to kill us. And then that did not transpire only because of my mother years earlier. When the hitman and his wife and children came to the town where this occurred, where I lived, my mother, she owned her own business. She always wore dresses and heels, drove a Cadillac, but she always had a heart for the homeless and for those that needed help. And she ended up driving her Cadillac under bridges, over railroad tracks, looking for the homeless so she could feed them and clothe them. And he and his family came to Springfield. And whenever he walked into the hotel room where we were at, where I was supposed to be going to get medical attention, he said that he was not going to kill us today because of what my mother had done. Because he recognized me from a photo that she had in her store. And he asked me, "Are you her daughter?" And he said her name. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Today I'm not going to kill you." He said, "Because of what your mother did for me and my family." He said, "When we came to town, she clothed us and she fed us." And he said, "I recognized you as her daughter."
What did that feel like when you heard that?
I'll tell you, I was in such shock whenever he walked in the hotel room and put the gun down on the table with a silencer and told us what he was going to do. That whenever he told me what my mother did, it was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. And this was a few years before this even transpired. So you have no idea what things are being set up behind the scenes prior to anything happening in your life. that could be the cause of your life being saved or your life changing at a certain point down the road. So that is what saved my life that day. So because of that, we left Missouri and my co-defendant took me to Alaska where he thought we would be safe. Excuse me. I am so sorry.
You're all
And
good. You're all good, Judy.
yeah, oh gosh. And so from there, that's where we were arrested and brought back to Missouri. We were up there for 6 months from July to December.
How did they catch you in December?
The attorney that my co-defendant and I spoke to prior to going to Alaska, because he wanted somebody to know what had happened, and he needed an attorney here in Missouri to ensure that if we were arrested, that he would be able to call him and talk to him. So we did that before we flew out, and the attorney advised us to fly out, and we ended up where he knew some people that were friends of his that he had affiliations with. He told me that they were gold mine. It was a gold mine business that he was involved in up there. So that's why we went up there. He knew them. And so we ended up staying with them. But these people also knew who the gentleman was that sent the hitman to kill us. So that gentleman that put out the hit, he ended up making calls up there to see if we were there. And they would tell him, no, we haven't seen them. But then come to find out, the woman that was the girlfriend of one of his associates used to date my co-defendant before that. And she ended up telling the police we were there. And there was I think there was a $1,000 reward. And so whenever we were arrested that night, of course, we never saw daylight again. I was put in a cell. In Alaska, their cells were in the prison. It wasn't a jail like we have here in Fairbanks. That's where we were arrested. So I was put in solitary confinement until I was flown back for extradition. We were both extradited back. And we both had the same attorney, which was that gentleman, and it was a serious conflict of interest. It was against my constitutional rights. But my family had never dealt with attorneys, or no one in my family had ever been arrested. We didn't know anything about criminal law or about the law, period. We did not know you shouldn't have the same attorney representing both of you. And so I went to trial first. I was found guilty of capital murder, which I could have received the death penalty. And if that had been the sentence the jury handed me, I would have been executed, in the gas chamber back then, after I'd served 18 to 20 years. So I wouldn't even be sitting here today telling people that I'm innocent of this murder. And I would have died, everybody thinking that I was guilty of it. Yeah.
Wow. What is
Yeah.
that like, saying that now for you?
It's like whenever the whole thing was happening and evolving, it was like I wasn't even there. It was like I was watching a movie reel or something, and it was very hard to believe it was reality for a while. And so to say that now, it's like, that was something that you only see in movies, something like this to happen. Because I was a upper middle class mother of 2 children. I had never been arrested before. I worked for the legal system. I worked in the courthouse, with the court administrator. We handed out summons. We filed attorneys' pleadings. We did all of that. So I was always thinking that the law was always right, that they never made mistakes. I believed in our system. So to hear that, even seeing me standing in a courtroom, was like, I just still can't believe this is happening. It was like looking at somebody else's life, but it wasn't me. And so it was very surreal. It was very shocking. And to have my 2 children torn away from me, because I was a very dedicated mother, always active in my daughter's life, which was 9 years younger than our son. I felt like my world had just been, it just crumbled. It just crumbled. I didn't have a life anymore, just that fast. So I had to learn a lot of new methods. I had to learn a lot of new ways in a brand new world I knew nothing about, and how to mother behind bars, and how to fight a system that put me there that I didn't know how to even begin to fight. But I learned the intense love that I had for my children and my family, and the anger that I felt after what happened and being found guilty and taken to this prison fueled me. And I always tell people there's 2 things you can do with anger. You can either get bitter or you can get better. And I chose better, because better was what was going to give me the fuel, the energy, the strength that I needed to learn how to navigate the law, the statutes that govern us, how to navigate politics, because it was politics that got me there, from a chief prosecutor that ended up becoming my advocate to get me released. But at the time, it was politics that was going to have to get me out, because I had exhausted all my legal. But I didn't wait for all my appeals to be denied before I started the clemency process to the governor. So I went through 6 governors, and it was finally the 7th governor. And I always call that God's number of completion. It took him 7 days to create the heaven and the earth. So I really look at numbers. I really do look at numbers. Yes. And so I learned how to be a certified paralegal. I graduated with honors. I had to know the law, so I had to take that, because they did offer college classes when I first went in. And so I had to learn a lot about politics, because I had to start building me a team to be able to fight the system that was so big. And that I never stopped until I was successful.
Did you ever get discouraged along the way as you're facing this resistance, you're facing these disappointments of, the first governor no, the second governor no, like what were your
Yes.
feelings and thoughts, like your internal world?
I would see other people, and that's what gave me the idea for me to file, because I'd seen somebody else that a governor had just released through a clemency, and I thought, well, what's a clemency? Because they don't teach that in law school to attorneys. Attorneys don't know how to do clemencies. I know how to do clemencies, and I can teach the lawyers a course in it. Because I've done so many, I know how to be very transparent. I know what they want. I know what they need to see, and I know how to be successful at it. And because I worked on several of the women's lifers, female lifer clemencies while I was there, and 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 were released by governors. And so I said, you know what? This works, and what happened to them is going to happen to me. And all of them, well, most of them, I should say, wanted their sentence to be commuted to time served, immediate release, and a pardon. And out of all those women, I'm the only one that got it all. The whole package, the whole enchilada. I got it. I got my sentence commuted that day. I got the time served that day. I got a pardon 6 months later, where I have no record. And so that was a big gift.
What do you credit getting the whole enchilada, as you call it? What do you credit getting the whole enchilada, like the whole thing, to? Like what made you different than, say, some others that they might have only gotten 50% of what they were asking?
I think a lot of it was because, one, the governor that commuted my sentence, it's his first term. He had never released anybody before, and it was his first year. He did it in December, and he wasn't sworn into office in that January before, so he hadn't even been a governor in office for a year yet. But because it was the right thing to do, because he sincerely investigated my case and he knew it was the right thing to do, he risked his career coming to the prison personally to bring me the golden seal on those papers that commuted my sentence. Another one time served, and then another one was a pardon. And he apologized sincerely to my family that was waiting in the waiting room to see me, and apologized to me for what the state of Missouri had done. And he had the courage, because politics wasn't his main concern. The citizens were his main concern, and doing the right thing was his main concern. He was not in it for the politics. He was in it for his constituents. And I will always commend him for that. Where other governors, they will not do a clemency till the end of their term, and usually not till after the election to see if they're going to get to do another 4 years. So it takes a lot of courage to do that, to do what he did. And there was one governor in 2000 that was going to commute my sentence and release me in November, and in October, he and his son were killed in a plane crash. Yes, that's how close I was in 2000, and I had to wait 2017. I had to wait 17 more years before I found this governor that did it. Yes, I was that close.
My goodness.
Yes. And his team, his legal team, even came to the prison to take a deposition from me and take it back to that governor. Governor Carnahan, Mel Carnahan, was the governor that died in the plane crash. And he had told my team, are releasing her in November. And then this happened in October. Yeah. So, of course, we were totally devastated, just devastated. But all during these years, I would pack my property up, put it under my bunk, and be ready at Christmas time, because that's normally when they do it, is at Christmas time. And then I would get denied, and you couldn't refile again for another 3 years. But I would do it all the time. I would pack up knowing I was going. And the whole 36 years, wardens, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, COs would all tell me, Judy, you're going to die here, so you might as well accept it. You're not leaving prison. And that whole time, I would tell them, yes, I am. I am going home. And they looked at me like I was crazy, you know? And then the day came. And that 1,600 women was in the yard of that prison, and it was like they were having a party. They were so excited, and the morale in that prison from other COs that I had talked to afterwards and become friends with, they said the morale was so high for weeks after that. It gave everybody so much hope. As I made my way through the crowd with COs protecting me, because they didn't know, would other, inmates be mad and upset because it wasn't them? So they wanted my safety, me to be safe. But it wasn't like that at all. They were so jubilant and so joyful. It was just like a party. They were happy. They were congratulating me. The staff was on every computer in the prison watching the whole scene. And I even had one caseworker that was on the outside coming back from lunch, and she knew my daughter from the visiting room, seeing her on visits, and she went up to her and she said, Angel. And there was a black limo waiting for me on the outside of the prison. So they wanted to know, who is this black limo, stretch limo for? My sister had promised me 20 years earlier that she was going to do that whenever I got released. And she never forgot. And she was there. She flew in from Arizona the night before at midnight to be there and arrange this. So it was, I'll tell you, and Angel told the caseworker, she said, she just looked at her and said, I can't say anything. I can't tell you anything. And so the caseworker went inside to the warden's office, put her hands on the desk and said, I want to know, is Judy Henderson getting released today? Because she always told me she was not going to retire until I was released, because she knew I was innocent. And, she retired. I got out in December. She retired in July.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you went in, your daughter was 3 years old, and when you got out, your daughter was 39.
No, my daughter was 12 and my son was, or 13. She just turned 13 that day. And my son was 3. Yes.
Three. Okay.
And
My daughter was
so,
30.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And so there was 9 years difference between the two. She was 13. He was 3 years old. And so I had to learn how to mother behind bars. And then my co-defendant put out a contract on me in prison before he went to trial. And so I found out about that. And so that was right when I got to prison. I didn't know how to navigate the system. I didn't even know the language that they spoke. I didn't know the rules, the policies. Nothing made sense in there. So I had to fight as soon as I got there, not long after, probably within the year. Because you know what, Chad, I'll have to say that incident, I'm not a violent person, but I was forced into a corner to save my life. But that established my status in the prison because they said, she takes care of herself because I still did my hair every morning. I still did my makeup every day. My mother taught me how to be a lady, but that was not the place to do any of that. But I continued that process, that regimen every morning. And so I wasn't well liked in the prison, not only by inmates, but nor by staff. And a lieutenant told me one morning at 2 o'clock, he called me down. He said, "You're going to have a long road to hoe, Judy." And I said, "But why? I don't bother anybody." He said, "Because you're not well liked here." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I just want you to be aware." So, that of course scared me to death. But then whenever another offender told me about the contract, then I had to take care of what I had to do on my terms because she was a career criminal and she always carried a shank. And so I just had to do what I had to do. The E squad came in and broke it up, and somebody else picked up the shank, another inmate, and got rid of it. But we went to the hole for quite a while, and she ended up getting transferred to Kansas, and there she cut a girl's face up with the shank. So I had to learn. I had to learn how to stand my ground while I was there. So I learned a lot of lessons there, a lot. But I had a strong, loving family that stood beside me all those years.
Mhm. How often would you get to see any of your family members? So
They could
your
visit every
aunt, your
week.
sister,
Yeah, there was 4 girls, 4 boys, and they could visit every weekend. We could have food visits, so they'd always bring me food. So there was somebody always coming to see me. They would bring my children until my son turned 5. And then my ex-husband that had custody then, of course, wouldn't let him come to see me any longer until he was 16. Then he drove himself up to see me for the first time since he was 5. Yeah.
what was that like for you?
I'll tell you what, they had what they call runners on the wings for the officer. Somebody called and said they wanted an inmate to report to medical or something like that. I was able to answer the phone, and if the staff person was away from the desk, and I would have go get the offender and tell them where they needed to go. So the phone rang, and I answered the phone, and the officer at the gate said, "Judy, do you have a son by the name of Chip?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "He's here at the gate wanting in to see you." And I just broke down, Chad, and I fell to my knees crying, just bawling. And one of the caseworkers came out of the office, and the officer was standing there on the wing, and she asked him, "What's wrong with Judy? What's going on?" And he said, "Her son is at the gate and wanting to visit her, but he hasn't filled out a visiting form. We've not done a background check. He can't come in." She said, "I don't care what you have to do, but you better open that gate and let him in here to see her." And so they did. He didn't have a background check. He had never filled out a visiting form, which was really a security risk. But she let him in. When he turned 16, he got his license and he drove to the prison to see me. And that was another miracle. He got in to see me. I went to the visiting room. I didn't know what he looked like. It was hard because I didn't even know what my own son looked like. But he knew me. And it had to have been from Angel, my daughter, her seeing pictures that we had taken together at the prison. And he knew who I was.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. But, I had a loving family, and just me being in prison, that also imprisoned them. And it was very hard for me. I didn't ever want them to know anything that I had gone through or what prison was actually like until I wrote this book, When the Light Finds Us. And when I wrote the book, that's when my family, for the first time, it was released April 15th this year. They read it, and that's the first time they ever knew what really happened in prison. Yeah.
Did you have any hesitation about sharing that, like in the book?
It took me 6 years to write. Yeah, I did, because I didn't know how they would receive what happened to me in my earlier years before incarceration. I didn't know how they would look at me. So I knew I was taking a risk, and it took me 6 years to write it with my co-author out of New York. But it was something that whenever people would hear the story about where I was, they said, Judy, you've got to write a book. People have to know how resilient you were, how no matter what, you did not give up for 36 years. They have to know how to do these things. You have a lot to share with people. So I said, okay. And I made a vision board while I was in prison. And I don't know if you're aware of what a vision board is like or what it is, but I got the idea from watching Oprah Winfrey, The Secret, when The Secret came out. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. It's just like having faith on a picture board. And so I made one. Everything I put on that board has come true. Everything.
Oh my goodness.
Commutation, time served, a pardon, going to New York, writing a book, doing a movie, and going to Anguilla, because that's where my daughter got married and I couldn't be there. And so I'm getting ready to do a new vision board of things, what I want my life to be like now. It's just,
What are you looking forward to putting on that vision board?
I want a house. I have a townhouse right now, but I want to buy a house. Now the one thing that didn't come true yet on the vision board is my own jet, my own plane. So, yeah, if you're going to wish, you might as well wish big, right? Right, Chad?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like thinking big.
Yes, I was thinking big.
That's right.
And yeah, so you know what? I have to say, I received so many gifts during that 36 years of incarceration. I was able to see people coming into my life and people going out of my life, all for a reason to accomplish what came to fruition on the day I was released. And I believe strategically, whatever our higher power is, they arrange those things in the universe for this to make things transpire that you believe that you can have. And I believe that's what happened. It was all just the ins and outs of a force, a power, energy, whatever you want to name it. And it just put things in the proper place as we went along to make it all happen, make the full picture, the puzzle come together. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So with this book that just came out April, so 2 months ago, what do you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, I want to accomplish for people to be able to read this book and see you don't have to give up. There's nothing in this life that is so powerful, that has more power than what we have within us. And I want people to know you can get through whatever you need to get through. You have what it takes, and not to give up. Look at the signs, follow the path that was laid out for you. And if there's something, and there's ways to mother children in this book, that a lot of parents that are incarcerated, or even out here, you don't have to be behind bars to have yourself in a prison. A lot of people out here, I've noticed, create their prisons, and they put those bars up and think they can't do this or they can't do this or that. You can do whatever you set your mind to doing if you want to do it bad enough. And even with people in
Yes.
your face telling you you're going to die every day there.
Yeah. There's a saying, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them.
Thank you. I love that. Yes. So true. Yes. That is very
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Be
That's true.
accountable about what your mind says.
Yes.
We all do.
Yes. Very true.
Wow.
Yes. Well, I hope that my story is one that resonates with you, resonates with your listeners, and they want to get the book When the Light Finds Us by Judy Henderson. And you can get it on Amazon, any bookstores where they carry books.
Wow.
And
And
I
you
also
mentioned
have a
doing a movie.
website. I'm sorry?
You mentioned a movie.
Yes,
Is that
yes, yes.
where can we see that movie?
Well, we'll see whenever it comes out. I don't know yet.
Okay. You know, in
Yes,
production and that sort of space.
yes,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
will know.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, well, so yeah, as we're coming up on time, any closing thoughts? Because I will, with my website and links and everything, I'm going to promote your book and your
Thank you.
website and
I think you have
yeah,
all that, I
of
believe.
course, yeah, yeah, I do.
Thanks.
And but as we're closing, like anything I didn't ask you that you want to touch on, or any closing thoughts that you want to share with my audience?
Well, of course, I would love for people to realize that whenever you think that you cannot get through something, just stop. Get you a piece of paper, cut some pictures out of a magazine, old newspapers, magazines, whatever, and put on there what you would like to have your life look like. Create your vision board. Create your faith in living color. So you can see that every day, because trust me, it does happen. It does come to fruition. I did this vision board, and I had a date on it. It was two pieces of cardboard from a legal pad. It was very elementary and very shabby looking, but it was powerful. Very powerful, evidently. You would have thought it was written in gold, but it does happen. That kind of enforces your belief that this can happen, by looking at it all the time. You see it every day. You have it sitting out. Oh, yeah, I want this. I want this to happen in my life. I want to meet a really super nice guy. I want to, I want a nice house. I want to live in a good neighborhood. I want enough money to get out of debt. Whatever it is that is holding you back from being who you really were created to be, put that on the vision board. And that would be my advice to people.
I love that. Judy, you are an absolute gift to the world.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you for having me. This has been such pleasure.
I mean, yeah, it's the same. Like, I am so grateful that you were willing to come on and share a little bit of your story, because your strength to, like you talked about, not come out and be bitter, but come out and be better, and to
Right.
share that message with the world, like we talked about before we started, is what I'm about, because that is a lesson that will keep on giving.
And you know what I found too, that if
Thank
you give and help others, it's going to come back to you triple fold. And that's what I love to do now that I'm out. I still work to help other lifers. I work to give people food. I work to put diapers on babies' little bottoms. And it's just such a joy to be here and be able to give back to the communities.
thank you so much for who you are.
You're welcome. I love being who I am today. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you liked it, please share with a friend on social media. That goes a long way to promoting this podcast so I can continue to interview and share these conversations with fascinating people. You can follow me on social media, Chad Stoloff, and visit my website, chadstoloff.wordpress.com, for more information. I'd love it if you would leave a review to support the podcast. Thanks so much. Until next time.